And we're live. It is Monday, May 19th, the year of our Lord 2025. It was a weekend of mischief. There was so much mischief. It was great. But we have some mischief for you this morning before Holly has to turn into a pumpkin. So I'm going to be brief on the mischief front.
Well, you can keep talking while I do it. Do we just introduce it and then I'll do
Yeah, so why don't you introduce it? It'll be the monologue for the morning.
Okay, so I've done this before, but this is a contraption that they sell on the internet where you can curl your hair overnight. And I've used it before. It's pretty wild, and I thought you guys enjoyed my bad hair day so much that I thought you would enjoy an unveiling of this contraption. So this is, again, what makes this show so revolutionary. But before I do that, maybe we should do the cactus.
Yeah, because the sun is shining. It's really shining today. The birds are chirping. It's going to be a great freaking day. And cactus?
We're watching Dog Shirt TV, an effing revolution in morning television.
You are watching Dog Shirt TV, and it is an effing revolution in morning television. And one of the revolutionary features is that occasionally Holly will demonstrate a hair care product live on
the made like that. But then
I mean it has because Holly, one of the revolutionary features is, and this is one of the things I love about Holly, is that Holly's capacity for shame and embarrassment is extremely suppressed.
Yeah.
Which I think is awesome because mine is the same.
We should have jobs in the Trump administration.
It's true, although the thing is, your capacity for moral shame is quite normal, maybe
I have
even
a lot
high.
Of integrity. I just don't have any capacity to embarrass.
Yeah, it's
amazing, guys. Those of you with hair are gonna want this for real. But it does come out like super curly to begin with, and then you have to like comb it quite a bit. And then my hair is so fine that it'll be completely straight within like 2 hours. Look at that. Look at
that. Yeah.
This is a revolution in hair care.
It's a revolution in hair care and morning television all at the same time.
And we are honestly, can I just say, between the two of us, the show, your antics, my antics, we are giving so much free sponsorship of products. You know, we should look at this, guys.
Well, I think you should.
Amazing.
I think you need to send the video of this to, well, if you brush it out, you're going to lose the curls.
Ben. That's the point. You don't just go out like this. You style it. It's you clearly have not done a lot of curling of hair.
Well, my hair is 1/4 of an inch long on a good day.
I think we should grow Ben's hair out so that then we can like curl his hair on TV.
You know, I have a secret for you, Holly Berkley Fletcher.
Look at that.
Which is that when my hair grows out, it ringlets
Glamorous.
all by itself.
Oh, no, I'm so jealous, Ben.
It has little, proving that my ancestors were Hussids.
Oh, my gosh.
I'm like, little Bo Peep or something.
I'm so jealous. See, and then I style it, the part is in the wrong place.
I think we should do Get Ready With Me videos with Holly and her hair.
Oh, we totally should. And we can just, maybe they make a Canadian version of this, or we should investigate where this is from. Maybe it's, most products are tariffed at this point.
It's true. I think we should
almost all
create but as a preliminary matter, we should make the maker of that product aware of the fact that we just used it live as the monologue on Dog Shirt TV, because they should be sponsoring Dog Shirt TV. Look, all of which
Culture Wine Company. I'm trying to get like something. I saw, guys. Quick context because you don't know. I made a second drink with me video with a bottle of South African wine. Very good. I really liked it. From this distributor in California called Culture Wine Company. Anyway, go on my YouTube. You will see it. It's quite a good video if I do say so myself. But I tagged them and they responded and they loved the video, but then it's like, are you going to send me like, anything freebie for the free
Right.
advertising?
I mean, come on. Makeup Addict sent a very nice group of brushes.
Really?
Oh yeah, no, Makeup Addict.
Bigger than me, though. I have to say, you have more followers.
I don't think in the makeup department I'm bigger than
But
you.
you have
Holly.
a lot of followers, so I don't have that many followers.
Remember,
that's my own goal.
Companies keep you want to buy in on influencers when they're small, because when they're big, they're going to be. You want them to remember you when they get huge. All of which is a very long-winded way of saying that we are not allowed to have fun anymore, but we are allowed to have Holly do her hair gratis live on the show, which, again, do any of the five do that? Do any of...
Definitely not.
Do any Fox and Friends? Oh. Does Joe and Mika ever do their hair?
Also, the five has a leg cam, but so do we.
All right. But before you go, Holly, we have an issue we need to discuss.
Well, okay.
Which is that there have been complaints from the Greek chorus that the snowman is being neglected, and that all the attention goes to the cactus, and that the snowman is gets no love and gets no attention. And and so I think this week, as part of our introductions, we're going to need to think about building a legend for the snowman.
Okay, we can work on that. So I just have to say about this issue, just as a backgrounder, is this is a classic case, and I'm sure those of you who are introverts feel the snowman's pain. This is a classic case of an introvert and an extrovert, friends, or sometimes it's a couple. My husband would know nothing about this. And the extrovert hogs all the attention, uses up all the oxygen, and the introvert, who is actually more brilliant, more interesting, more amazing. Oh, Nastia, the introvert gets the shaft, and nobody just sits there quietly because can't get in a word edgewise. That's clearly what's going on with the snowman. So we'll work on that. I mean,
excellent.
He doesn't talk. He's also mute.
Yeah, being mute really hurts in audio formats.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, Holly has to run off to one of these things that parenting a teenager involves. And we are joined by Nastia, who is in a location further north than I have ever been. Nastia, where are you joining from?
I'm in Kirkenes, in the Arctic Norway, on the border with Russia. And it's the coolest shit I've ever done in my life. I've been here talking to the local journalists for like an hour, and my brain is exploding. I'm like frantically writing everything down so I don't forget anything.
Okay, so first of all, let's just say Nastia has now been further north than I've ever been. The farthest north I've ever been is a town called Narvik, which is it's well north of the Arctic Circle, but well south of where Nastia is. She passed it on a plane, waved at it on the way down. You're sideways now.
Oh, is that bad? Okay, is this better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Stay in.
Got it. Okay.
All right. So here's my question: what is a town up there like? Like what's, it seems sort of white and gray. You were sending me pictures last night of the midnight sun.
Yeah.
What's it like now? Show us a little bit of the town.
Well, so Wait, how do I turn my camera on my phone?
I don't know.
This
I
is
don't know what kind of
problematic.
phone you have. You can also just turn your phone around.
Yeah, but that's not ideal. Wait, one sec. Uh,
How cold is
well,
it there?
my hands are cold. My body isn't cold. My hands are cold. Wait, why is this not cooperating with me?
Maybe because it's cold.
No, I don't think that has anything to do with it. Um, okay, wait, give me a sec. One
All
sec.
right. So, while Nastia is working on that, uh, yeah. So, I will just. Oh, now she's
Okay,
back.
check it out. That's a Russian ship.
That's a Russian ship.
Yeah.
Is it in Kirkenes or is it on the Russian side of the border?
Now it's in Kirkenes.
What's it
And
doing
now I
there?
don't know how to turn now I don't know how to turn the camera back on. Why is my phone not cooperating? Okay, give me a second again.
Um, yeah. So Kirkenes, if you look at it on a map, is right nestled up against the Russian border, and
Okay,
there.
hi.
Hi.
So, Russian ship.
How big is the town? How many people are there?
Actually, I don't know the exact number. I should know that. I mean, it's like a few thousand, I think. I mean, it's like a tiny little thing. It's like a tiny town borderlining on a village.
And why is it there? Why does anyone want to live up there?
Well, there's like fishing stuff. It's on the coast. There's a port that's kind of important. It's so Russian fishing vessels are prohibited from docking in Norwegian ports, except for three ports, one in Tromsø, one in another town whose name I forget, and one in Kirkenes. So Kirkenes is one of the three ports where Russians are allowed to dock.
And why do they let Russians dock at all?
Because there's a lot of like fishing happening in this area. It's like a big fishing town, and there's been a lot of cross-border cooperation. So, but it's a good question. So this is like the main
That's the main street.
street, and
Look, it's happening.
it's
It
happening.
looks busy.
There are humans here, I promise.
Yeah, but they're just not
Uh,
outside.
um, so I heard like the coolest. Well, I've heard like a million cool stories, but I heard something like very emblematic of the Russians, I think. So there is a town in Russia, the little town of Nikel, where they, you know, get nickel out of the ground and like process it. And there used to be a big plant. Oh, I think I'm near the Russian consulate. There's a Russian consulate over there. You
Oh,
can
wait,
barely
take a
see it.
walk over to it so that we can
I
see the Russian consulate and we can
so you
imagine.
you want me to go right up to the FSB agents and bother
Yes,
them?
I want to, and
That's very safe.
I want you to show me so that I can fantasize about what Lord Laser would do.
Okay, but the nickel story first. Uh, so there's this town on the other side of Kirkenes, on the other side of the border, Nickel. That place is in the Petsamo region, which used to be Finnish territory before World War II. And so the Finns were the first ones to find deposits of nickel there. And they started like investing into the infrastructure to like try and make it a big thing. And then after the war, the Russians occupied it, like they took it because that was part of the Finnish and Russian treaty. The Russians getting control of Petsamo region, which included nickel. They built the plant there, and it ended up being super inefficient, underfunded, like terrible. But most importantly, it had insane pollution, like incredible levels of pollution to a point where the wind would blow all of these clouds to Kirkenes, and the locals would suffer because of this pollution. So far, like so much that supposedly like 50 years ago,
Wait,
this
is
place
that
was
a
full of,
Thai restaurant?
I think so, Bangkok restaurant.
All right, yeah.
Yes,
So just want to point out when you guys go to Kirkenes,
there's
there's
Bangkok.
Thai food.
Yes. Um,
Can you imagine the Thai family that was like, I know where we're going to settle, guys. you know,
It's weird.
it's too hot here in Phuket. let's go open a Thai restaurant in Kirkenes.
Oh, and here is the Navalny Memorial. Oh, shit's about to get dramatic. Okay, but let me finish the story. So the Russian built this plant. The plant has insane pollution to a point there, like supposedly like 50 years ago, this area was full of forests, and now all of them are gone, mainly because of the pollution from that Russian plant. And in the 90s, there started to be this like local Kirkenes movement to like close down the plant. It was like a whole thing, like people protested. They called these pollution clouds death clouds. Oh, and here is Thomas, the chief editor of Barren Observer. Just met him on a walk. And so, what's more emblematic of Russia than taking a place where someone found something good, occupying it, making company, and then raising shit to the ground with pollution? I'm telling them about nuclear. Yeah, I'm talking to my boss. Say hi.
Hello.
Hey.
Wait,
So
let me disconnect.
whoops.
Recorded, by the way.
Good. Hello.
How are you?
I'm fine. I'm just arriving from the dentist, so
Oh,
my
I'm
voice
sorry.
is a bit. But it's very, very cool to meet your Anastasiia here.
It's super cool to meet you. And
Here is Minna.
And here is Minna Ålander, who grew up a lot closer to Kirkenes than I have ever been, I think. Minna,
Are we talking
have you ever been that far north?
things that you're doing, or are you done? Okay.
So I'm trying to figure out.
Well,
I think the farthest north that I've been is Tromsø, which is also in northern Norway.
Yeah, so this is north of that. So,
Yeah.
so tell us about the Barren Observer.
tell them about the Barren Observer.
The Barren Observer is Europe's northernmost English Russian language newspaper, covering the Russian Arctic and the Scandinavian Arctic. Based here in Kirkenes, but not allowed to cross the border into Russia.
What do you mean not allowed to cross the border? As in you can't distribute it, or?
I'm persona non grata, and officially, and my other Norwegian colleague is, he simply don't get press accreditation.
Gotcha.
And we have a few Russian exiled journalists, and they will go directly to jail if they cross the border.
Yeah.
You know.
I know. So what have you guys done that has led to this this problem? And when you say English language and Russian language, what about Norwegian language? Why is the publication in English and Russian and not in Norwegian?
You know, we have very, very many other newspapers in Norway in Norwegian. So we are dedicated to provide international news for an international audience about the Arctic. And then we assume that most Norwegians interested in Arctic issues and Russian issues are reading English. And since we are a kind of low cost, we have to make priorities. So it's English, Russian.
It's a niche.
Interesting. And how many people work for it?
Right now we are 6 journalists. And
Wow.
since we are low cost, we are no more people. We don't have any in administration and so on.
So
all
the journalists do everything.
cleaning the office, making the coffee, doing the journalism.
I just wanted to say that, like, you're doing an amazing job. Like, it's a source that I follow very
Yes.
closely, and you're really often, like, you get the news that nobody else does. So you do a really,
Yes.
really amazing job.
Like, if you go to their website, it does not look like a 6-person operation at all.
So, question, how did you come to be living in Kirkenes? Did you grow up there? Are you from the Norwegian Arctic, or is this a lifestyle choice?
It's also a low-cost story. When I was the age of Anastasiia, I was traveling very much in Russia. And I spent one summer in Siberia.
Ugh.
And after 1.5 months, I came back to Moscow, but I could not afford the ticket from Moscow over to Oslo.
Oh, wow.
So I bought a train ticket north to Murmansk and then to the border city of Nikol, and crossed the border over here. Costed maybe $10 American altogether.
Oh my God.
And then I came to Kirkenes without any more money, and I was offered a job in the local radio. So that's how I ended up here. I've been traveling around after that also, but I'm not originally from here. But here I am.
And how does how
By the
many
way, just so you know, all of this is happening right in front of the Russian consulate. Like, we're just standing here.
Lord
looking
Laser
at it.
is salivating with envy because he would give almost anything to be that close to a Russian consulate, although he does note that the land of the midnight sun does not favor
He does
laser.
laser projections at the Russian embassy in Washington to annoy the Russians.
Okay.
So he does that, and he wanted to come here, but it's the midnight sun, so he can't.
You know,
But,
I don't travel to where there's no night.
It's no
We should
night
come in
now.
the winter.
Please, you're most welcome in November.
Yeah, I'm excited about it.
Yeah.
So
By the way, there's a question in the chat. There's a question in the chat, like what your financial sources are. Like, how do you survive?
yeah,
Okay, that's dramatic. They all look well fed and nice guys.
what's the revenue source of the Barren Observer?
We don't have one source. We have many small sources, and that is to keep us alive. That we don't depend on one source.
Okay.
But crowdfunding, very important. We have some project grants from foundations and so on. Since we are located where we are, we also sell photos, videos from time to time. We have a landlord that gives us nearly free of charge office, and we are not on paper, so we don't have any printing costs. Low cost, but here we go.
Excellent. So we will share a link to the crowdfunding in the newsletter for those who want to support Arctic journalism. And we will make it the cause of the day, which we sometimes do. So how many people live in Kirkenes? Like what's the community, and other than fishing, what are the industries? I take it nickel isn't still one of them.
It's about 10,000 people in the municipality, and the most part of that is in the town. It's an old mining society, but the mine went bankrupt some years ago, so there's not many people left there. But tourism is growing. You know, people are coming from all over the world to see
Like
the
me.
northern lights and to do dog sledging in the winter. And we even have a snow hotel that is operating year-round. So tourism is probably the biggest private business right now.
Interesting.
Northern Finland.
So
we're gonna go hang out at the Russian border.
all right. Well, so tune in from the Russian border so you can show us Russia, and we will let you go.
Okay.
But come back and give us a view of the Russian border.
Okay. Minna, have fun. I'll see you soon.
Ciao.
Bye.
Hello, Minna.
Hello.
Bet you never thought we would have a live show from north of where you grew up.
Well, I mean, I thought that there was some chance since I knew that Nastia was going there. So I had like a little idea that this might happen. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out how to get the notification out of your face, Ben. It's sort of
How to
like,
get what?
there's a notification that is like just in your face and it doesn't
I
want to
see.
go out.
Well, my face is usually some kind of notification. So, good to see you.
Good to see you.
You
And I
are
have
way
to
down
say-
south in Stockholm.
Oh yeah, this is like
It's like 1,000 miles away.
It literally is.
Yeah.
Sort of. Yeah. So this is like far down south. And I have to immediately apologize because like my calendar was again mixed up between time zones because I was in Estonia last weekend, and I thought that my next Zoom call is at like in an hour, but it's actually Swedish time. Of course, it's already in 5 minutes.
So we will. So
Yes.
tell us a little bit. We'll save other stuff for a different time. Tell us a little bit about how you use the Barren Observer, since we seem to be talking to them today.
So it's a really great source. I can really recommend it to everybody who is like in any way interested in Arctic security, for example, because they really get these stories about like whatever Russia is doing. So for example, when I was doing some research on Russia's dumping of nuclear waste in the Arctic, they had really been tracking that also with an environmental organization called Bellona, a Norwegian Russian environmental organization. So they had done a lot of reporting on the history of that like nuclear waste dumping into the Arctic waters in Russia, and what the situation was, like what was the status of the waste. They had also followed up stories like when the Russians sort of accidentally lost a nuclear powered submarine when they were towing it, and it sank into the bottom of the Arctic Ocean as well. So they've been doing a lot of this kind of stuff, like really like that you don't necessarily find somewhere else. They were following up very closely, sort of like the happenings with the Svalbard internet and electricity cables that were cut. Like the suspicion is of by Russian fishing vessels, and then also when there were these cable cutting incidents in the Baltic Sea, and then like for example one of the perpetrators just like happily sailed off to the Northern Sea route, and they were tracking it, how it was escorted by a Russian icebreaker. So they really have all these like really great stories from that region that like, and especially related to Russia. They've been also reporting from Svalbard like all the weird things that Russia is doing there, with some like military-like parades on the Victory Day or something, and
We can't make fun of that anymore.
yeah. So this like they really sort of like there's so much happening there that like people don't necessarily in other like media outlets pay any attention to, but they get the stories because they're like close by, and like so it's a super good source, I think, and I'm really impressed by the level of like detail they get into and like what they managed to do with such a small team. So
super cool. So you have to turn into a pumpkin, but maybe show up tomorrow instead.
Yes, tomorrow looks much better. So this was it's always, like when you come from a conference and then the next day is sort of like a...
Time zones are the worst.
Yeah.
That's
Even
why
if it's just 1 hour, it's just like...
No. I mean, I keep saying, this is longtime viewers of the show know that this is my hobby horse. Get rid of time zones. It doesn't matter if you call it 7 a.m. or 2 p.m. Let's just have, like as somebody who gets on and off planes and does shows with people who live in other parts of the world, let's just use universal time. We can get used to, early morning being 2 p.m. here. We can we'll figure it out. Jesus Christ. All right, Minna, we will see you tomorrow.
Yes.
You're a great Finn, even if you're temporarily sojourned in Stockholm or more permanently sojourned in Stockholm. And we will see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow for the whole show.
Take care.
Bye.
All of which leaves us with no Holly, no Nastia, and no Minna, and no Barren Observer. So that means we have until Nastia, if she does, shows up from the Russian border, which will be our first live show from the Russian border, leaves the phones open, as we used to say in talk radio, which we don't say anymore, but, which means, Greek chorus, let's see what you got. I'm going to shut up and wait till somebody shows up. I'm not afraid of dead time. I can do this all day. Frank, how are you?
Good. How are you, Ben?
So good.
I want to show off my old school ILOC.
Oh, man, you're a great American. Look, wait, hold it up again. Wait, I just made you disappear, and I didn't mean to. Wait a minute. How do I bring you back? Can I hear you? Ah, there you are. Okay. Now, let's try that again.
Turn a little bit so you can get better light.
There it is, the old style Order of the Baby Cannon mug. There aren't that many of those left in the world.
It's different. The other side is different. Let me see.
Yeah, well, it's the other side of the coin, the Baby Cannon Challenge coin.
So,
oh, man, those were the days. What is on your mind this morning?
I want to help you out and get rid of dead space, but I'm also curious. We haven't heard your views on the recent Supreme Court arguments and things like that, which I'm sure you've given some thought to.
Yes, so I have not read yet the 7-2 decision in AARP from Friday, because I'm a bad person who's behind on my reading. But I did listen pretty carefully to the Supreme Court argument in the I'm not sure whether to call it the birthright citizenship case or the universal injunction case. It presents as the latter, although it really is ultimately the former. Whoa, Minna's back.
Hi, yes.
Can I say quickly? Is that I was telling people, oh, there's this show that I joined. I don't go into the fact that it's a revolution of any kind, except that
that's a fucking revolution to you, Frank.
I'm talking to, not usually Jonathan Rauch, but that one of the things that is really interesting is it's my one best source for Nordic news, and that's largely due to Minna and the other co-hosts.
Because, what other morning show does any Nordic news? I mean, one of the revolutionary features, and there are many, is that we even know that there is a Nordic region, which, the Five, Fox and Friends, Mika and Joe, you would think the world stops at Maine or something. There, you won't even get Newfoundland and Labrador in there. I think if the Nordics, if the fact that there is a North even registers on your radar screen, this is the morning show for you.
That's right.
I take it your meeting got canceled, Minna?
Oh.
Whoa, you're muted.
Ben, I'm going to let you answer the question and then continue talking with Minna. But good morning to all of you.
All right.
Morning, Frank. So my call was postponed by half an hour. So here I am. I'm back.
Yeah, here you are. All right, let me answer Frank's question briefly, and then we will return to the far north. or even the moderate north, like Stockholm. So, yeah, the answer is that I think anybody who confidently predicts what that argument means is talking out of their ass, frankly. I think we had a conversation about it with James Pierce on Lawfare Live on Friday. I think the argument was super complicated. By the way, it is, it's mapping onto a contemporary political issue, but it's not. The issue of universal injunctions is a complicated one that crosses all kinds of ideological lines. And I think we are likely to get something. So my thoughts in detail on the subject are on the Lawfare Live in conversation with James. I don't want to eat up 20 minutes repeating that here, but we had an extended conversation about it on Friday that's on the Lawfare podcast feed this morning. And I do think, but I will say I don't know what to expect from the Supreme Court on this, and I don't think anybody else does either. And I thought the argument was sophisticated and interesting, and actually the Supreme Court kind of at its best thinking through a difficult issue from a diverse array of perspectives. So I would just hold that idea. We're going to get a ruling sometime in the not too distant future. Remember, this is on the emergency docket. And then it will come back to the Supreme Court as a birthright citizenship case. And this, I will say with confidence, the administration is going to lose. The Constitution says very clearly that if you're born in the United States, you're a citizen of the United States. And I don't believe there are even 2 votes on the Supreme Court for the idea that that sentence doesn't mean what it says. And so the question here is, there's 2 questions. One, the immediate question, which is how much power does an individual district judge to issue an injunction that enjoins the government's activity nationwide, even affecting people who are not parties to the litigation? That is a complicated question. The second question is, and I don't know how the Supreme Court is going to rule on that. The second question is the merits question. Does the birthright citizenship clause of the 14th Amendment mean what it appears to say? The answer to that question is yes. And the Supreme Court will eventually, and I don't think it will take very long, rule that way, much to the chagrin of Stephen Miller and Donald Trump. Okay, back to Stockholm. If you're born in Sweden, Minna, are you a Swedish citizen?
Good question.
What about Finland?
I think in Finland, like, it's sort of that if your parents are either Finnish citizens and they've been, I think if you're both your parents are Finnish citizens, then definitely. But then also, I guess, like, if they've been living in Finland for some period of time, so the Finnish laws are definitely, they have been more restrictive than in Sweden. In Sweden, it was a bit easier to get citizenship, or it was a faster process. How it is, I think in Sweden, it's something, to be honest, like, I have no idea really exactly like how those citizenship laws work. We definitely don't have this kind of automatic birthright something, as far as I know.
Yeah, very few countries have automatic birthright citizenship. I believe Canada does, although I will leave that to our Canadian co-hosts to verify. I'm trying to think, but most countries still have some form of what's called citizenship by blood. And there's a U.S. citizenship law is unusual in that regard because of the whole immigrant society and post-slavery text of the states tried to prevent granting citizenship rights to freed slaves, and the 14th Amendment said, forget about that. If you're born in X state, you're a citizen of the state. Full stop. So, what is on? You're heading up to Kirkenes this week too. What's the big party in Kirkenes?
Well, we'll see. So you're not coming, or are you coming?
I am not coming.
Oh, that's too bad.
I am
because of the polar day that ruined your laser plans.
Look, would I have made the extra effort if there were going to be an hour of nighttime to project a big Ukrainian flag on that building? Yes. And maybe gone across to the Russian border and projected a Ukrainian flag into Russia, I would not have been able to resist. However, I do have this little magazine to run, and
right.
And it's not, democracy is in crisis here at home, and as John Quincy Adams once said, I don't, need to go overseas chasing monsters.
Fair enough.
We've got our own. By the way, speaking of chasing monsters, did you see the monster I chased this weekend?
No, I didn't.
Let me show it to you. I was very proud of it. So Trump put up, or somebody put up.
Oh, that one, of course. That one I saw. I thought that you were talking about the Beast of the Day or something. But no. I of course saw.
I was talking about this. So I have this idea for this monster, which is that I'm going to do a series of projections with different designs on Trump's face and Abe Lincoln making comments about them. Like, for this clown, I saved the Union, and then Trump's face would be a clown face,
Very good.
And so, it'll be like a whole series of projections with Abe doing, a running commentary.
Very good.
So what's on your mind this morning or this afternoon?
To be honest, it was quite the week last week somehow, with everything going on with this, ceasefire negotiation charade in Istanbul and everything. And then I was also at 2 conferences, which is a lot for 1 week. I have to say now I'm feeling somewhat conferenced out, but still looking forward to Kirkenes as well. So Tallinn was pretty good. I was there at the Lennart Meri conference over the weekend, which is a very good conference in Estonia, and it's always interesting. They always get good people there. One very interesting speaker there was the new NATO ambassador. The new NATO, American NATO ambassador, who started his remarks by admitting that he's not competent for the position, which was interesting. And it was an interesting vibe that usually in the past, somebody like the American NATO ambassador would have been definitely the star of the show at this conference. But now he was sitting on the stage with the Polish foreign minister, the Estonian foreign minister, and NATO assistant secretary general.
Did the Polish foreign minister have any good jokes?
He did, and I'm going to get to that. You're going to love this.
Radek, I've known Radek for 25 years, and he is always good for a good joke. Yeah, sometimes very inappropriate.
Yeah, so he was there on stage, and he was in a very much defensive position, which is just it's a weird vibe. We're not used to that. We're used to being chummy with the Americans, But so there were some really interesting situations, such as Sikorski, the Polish foreign minister, patiently trying to explain to the new NATO ambassador from the US, Whitaker is his name, trying to explain to him basic fiscal principles, about borrowing money, where to use it, that there's politics in Europe too, that if we're gonna use a shit ton of money on apologies for my French, if we are going to use a lot of money for defense, building up a defense industrial base and so on, we can't just spend all of that in America because there's politics in Europe. But anyway, so the joke that he made, and we are going to have an issue with this because one question was, because there's been all these rumors that Zelensky wouldn't get invited to the NATO summit in The Hague end of June. And then one question from the audience was like whether people think that it should be the case or not. Like, should Zelensky be invited? And so then Sikorsky had just like answered the question, and then he added that he would also like to see Putin in The Hague. And everybody was laughing because, of course, he meant the other building.
Right.
But Whittaker clearly didn't get this joke at all. He was like sort of like sitting there with a blank face. And I'm afraid that like Sikorsky accidentally created a monster, and now Whittaker is going to report back to Trump that the crazy Euros want Putin at the NATO summit.
Excellent.
So just in case that like Trump and Putin speak today and Trump issues an invitation to the NATO summit, it's Sikorsky's fault.
Well,
because this joke was too complex for the new NATO ambassador from the US.
Yeah. We are sending remarkably dumb people to important positions. And I have to say that as a proud American, this is really embarrassing. Just the level of dumb, quite apart from the terrible policy, the evil, I have to say that the moron thing really bothers me. I don't talk about it much because it's less important than the evil, but it does really bother me that we're sending complete idiots to positions where it actually matters whether you have the most basic level of knowledge and competence. And I have a million examples of this, but none better than a joke about The Hague from the Polish foreign minister to the NATO ambassador, who just doesn't get the joke and thinks that it's about a Zelensky Putin meeting. So thank you, Minna, for ruining my day with that.
On the other hand, I have to say that it was also interesting to listen to him because he was clearly sort of like, I mean, my sense is that there has been this effort by lower level sort of like representatives of this administration to at the same time sort of like reassure Europeans that the US is not leaving NATO. And actually, I don't think that the US has any interest to leave NATO, like sort of officially or like completely. My sense is that even the Trump administration has sort of like realized that it is somewhat useful to have such an alliance. So it was pretty interesting how, in his own way, also Whittaker was trying to do some of that reassurance about that there will be like sort of maybe changes in the US force posture, but that does not mean that the US does not care about NATO. So
yeah, I wish I could be optimistic on that score.
I'm not optimistic about that, and obviously there's been a lot of discussion about like whether it's actually at this stage better that the US just exits NATO and leaves it to the Europeans, and the Europeans can somehow like make it work in a new way, like make it a more sort of like European Canadian organization or something, than that the US stays in and potentially just like makes life hard for everybody. Fair enough. It's definitely a good argument to be made as well. However, I do think that at the moment, in the situation that we're in Europe, it's still better if the US does not officially and fully leave NATO. Because, to be honest, we need all the time that we can get in order to get, first of all, wrap our heads around like this idea of fighting Russia without the Americans, potentially. I mean, like how to deter Russia without the American commitment to this continent. And we're gonna need some time to sort of like figure that out and to build the capacity that is needed in order to do that. It can be done, but it's gonna take some time. And the worst that could happen right now is sort of like this kind of disorderly exit of the US.
Right.
So it's important that it goes sort of like phase by phase and in some kind of a controlled fashion, so that like we don't open up a window of opportunity for Russia. Because like it's that would be very dangerous for Europe.
Yeah, I think the other side of that, which is that if the U.S. were to declare that it were leaving, that is hard to undo. Whereas if we putter along in this stage of Europe has to act like we're leaving, but we haven't formally left, and we can defer the question for as long as possible, the possibility that 3 years from now we have a different American posture, either as a result of congressional insistence that this not happen, or as a result of a change in the executive branch, or both, is non-trivial. And, I think there's a lot to be said for not making final and permanent what may be temporary. Europe has to act the same way anyway, and it should, because it shouldn't be, riding the waves of American domestic nonsense. Its security can't be dependent on that. But I do think, there is a non-trivial chance that the U.S. will right its own ship, and we should all be in a position to maximize the benefit of that if and when it were to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, it is sort of like, I know that like there's still some wishful thinking lingering in Europe that maybe if we just sit this out, like if we manage to sort of like somehow sort of like keep Trump from sort of going all in on wreaking havoc on us, then like maybe he's gonna be gone at some point, and there still is a future for the transatlantic relationship. But of course there is a chance, like I don't know what odds you give Vance, but like if he's gonna be the next president, like we all know his views about Europe. So I don't think that there is like any scenario where it will ever go back to what it was. So in that sense, Europe does need to like make the right decisions now. But of course, like the timeline makes all the difference. Like it depends on whether we have a couple months or whether we have a couple of years. So
the timeline makes a big difference, but I also think there's a huge range between the U.S. and Europe severing the traditional transatlantic relationship and going back to what it was. And, if you think about could we have I'm going to keep you muted because I'm getting a little echo on myself when I'm, there's a huge range between it going back to the way it was and a total severance. And, it would not be the worst thing in the world if, we didn't leave Europe. The NATO relationship remained intact, but Europe was more suspicious of us and more interested in self-reliance than it had been in the past. That would not be a bad outcome. And so I think the goal here, at least from an American perspective, or an American anti-Trump perspective, has to be to preserve all options for a post-Trump period and acknowledge that Europe is going to have to do the things that it's going to have to do because of our folly. But what we don't have to do is assume the worst possible outcome.
Yeah, that's accurate. Sort of, because I don't think that like there is no way, or like there would be no reason for Europe to want to just like, like show Trump the diplomatic middle finger or something like that. So of course, like we all hope, because the transatlantic relationship is a very, very close and deep one, and has a long history. So I don't think it's wrong to hope that it's not over entirely, while at the same time sort of like figuring out how to recalibrate it in the way that Europe is a much more capable partner, and also sort of like does its own thing more than it's used to. And the thing is that it's really funny when you read about the history of NATO, for example. European leadership has always been a thing that somehow nobody wanted to touch with even like a long stick. So after the world wars, it was sort of like the US was trying to sort of like push the Europeans to take more responsibility and figure out their stuff in a way that like they wouldn't have to go to war all the time, and like drag everybody else into it as well. And the Europeans were like never, I mean, everybody knows that we rarely agree on anything, at least not immediately. And most of the countries are also just like so beat by the war that like they weren't really able to like or willing to take on a leadership role. So it has left this sort of like European leadership paradox, that it just sort of like nobody just really wants to do it. Nobody's quite able to do it. It's always something that like somebody's always accusing somebody about like that you should do this, but you're clearly not willing or able or something. And this is like one of these like transatlantic paradoxes that like how it then came to be that we because for some reason Europeans don't really want to take on the leadership for this continent. So then it was very convenient when the US did it, at least in the realm of security and defense. So this is something that we have to sort of like figure out among ourselves as well, how to sort of like also, and that may be a legacy of that American leadership in Europe, that we have gotten used to sort of like thinking of leadership as that it should come from a single source, because this is always the question sort of from the US, like who do I call, who is the leader of Europe? And there will never be that kind of unitary leadership in Europe. It's going to be always sort of like a coalition of countries. And like there's not going to be like one person who can do that. So it's also something that we need to just like figure out on the continent for ourselves.
Well, and it's also a, the natural answer to the question of who should be Europe's leadership, if you look at size and scope and population, is Germany and France. And the reality is that Germany is willing to play that role in the economic and financial space and not willing to play that role in the military space. And France is actually not, despite, Bastille Day parades and whatever, France is actually not in a position to play that role in either space. It can't get its people to go to work. And it's not the kind of economic engine that can do that. And so you have this weird paradox where the states that are most positioned to play leadership roles in the military space, for example, Poland, in a limited sense, Finland, don't have the political clout or the economic clout. And the states that have the economic clout are, frankly, the laziest in the military space. And so you have this problem that the Americans have traditionally just solved by throwing up our hands and saying, okay, we'll do it, which is also something that heartens Americans like me, because I am perfectly happy to have Europeans free riding off of the American security umbrella. We get lots of benefits from that. But it turns out it infuriates a large number of my countrymen who, who
don't see the benefits.
And who don't understand that that the costs are actually minor, in the sense that we don't fight wars on European soil, right? It's not like, people are mapping Afghanistan and Iraq and all these wars, Europe didn't want to be involved in Iraq, right? Like that was our folly. That was not a function of European free riding on anything. We got ourselves into that mess.
And actually, the American bases in Europe were pretty essential for those wars. But of course, this is a bad argument with the Trump people because they think that that war was a mistake anyways. However, I have to unfortunately apologize myself again for the second time today.
We actually have to wrap. So we're going to be back tomorrow, folks. I don't know whether Minna's going to be here, whether somebody else is going to be here.
I will.
Oh, excellent.
I promise I will be here.
We will continue this conversation with Minna tomorrow from the far south, the global south, Stockholm.
Absolutely. Great. See you tomorrow. Bye.